Between 900 and 1,000 people are moving to Florida a day to live. That's in addition to the millions of people that come here to vacation. And you add those cars on the road, and a road today which doesn't present a significant impact to that panther or to that bear, over time, as traffic volume increases, will become a fragmenting effect.
First met FP 224 when she was a kitten, about 8 or 9 months old. She was hit by a car, laying up in somebody's yard, underneath some palmetto bushes, got her stabilized, took her to one of the local vet clinics here in town that we have a relationship with. And it was the right leg, back leg that was broken. Bone was pretty much snapped right in half. At the vet clinic, they have a team of surgeons that actually repaired the fracture. You can see from the x-rays, they used a series of pins and plates to put that bone back together. Once she's then stabilized after surgery, she was transported to another facility that we work with called White Oak. 224 was in captivity for about 10 months. But it's a great success story to take a young panther with a broken leg, rehab her, and get her back out into the wild. Where we released her was as far away from roads as we thought we could get. And this is about 30 miles from where she was hit by a car. It wasn't long before she made it all the way back to her natal home range. How they do that, why they do that, how they know to do that, it's one of the great mysteries of the wildlife world. Somehow she knew where home was, and she went back to it.
I had a pretty unique perspective growing up. I could walk, less than a mile as a kid to beautiful lakes and the woods, and we would see wildlife and we'd go fishing. But as I grew older and went off to college and came back, a lot of that was gone, unfortunately. A lot of the habitat in Lake County were impacted, through 80, 100 years worth of citrus up until the 1980s when the Great Freezes occurred. So at that point, we started seeing the conversion of those citrus groves, those citrus properties, into development. As that growth occurred, it filled into those areas that were once citrus groves, also having impact on our natural habitats around those citrus groves that were remaining.
It is so important for us to be intellectually humble, recognize what we don't know. If we don't do that, if we don't approach the challenges and decision-making that face us on a daily basis, then we will make decisions that have unintended consequences that affect future generations. I don't think when we were generations ago developing the road system or the canal system ever thought about the potential impacts on these populations, but they happen.
Panthers don't really look at roads as something to be avoided. It's something within their environment and they just cross it. When a panther gets hit, people can't believe how somebody could hit a panther. They're a fairly large animal. Surely you should be able to see them. But nothing in the panther's world travels at 80 miles an hour. So when they're crossing a road and they see a car down the road and it's coming straight at them, it's hard for them to judge how far away it is and how quickly it's approaching them. They start walking across the road and that vehicle is there before they know it. So, people don't hit panthers on purpose. It's an accident, something that happens. Wherever there's roads, panthers are going to get hit. So, fast forward 4 years later, 224 is about 5.5, 6 years old now, and she gets hit by a car again. A passing motorist saw her laying on the side of the road, took a picture, and actually called us about it. And when she fell asleep, that's when we were able to see the extent of her injury. We could tell the other leg was broken, and she also had a big cut in her side. We knew she had kittens with her, but we did not know if they were with her at the time. So we went out and set some box traps to catch the kittens, thinking that they would, kind of hang around, looking for mom. Sure enough, they came back and we caught them that night, which was, just fascinating to me. One, how they could find her, but they also found that spot. The third kitten, for whatever reason, was lagging behind just another day. What's interesting about this location is where 224 was actually on the south side of I-75, west of County Road 951. So to get to where she was, she actually crossed north of I-75, crossing 6 lanes of traffic, and then crossing east to 951, and that's where she got hit. So her kittens did that same route, and the 2 male kittens found where she was. That female kitten was a day or so behind her brothers, did not find them. So she went back to the last location where the whole family was together, which was that spot south of I-75. So she made it back across 951, but then when she was trying to cross south of I-75, she actually got hit and killed.
The Florida Department of Transportation is always cognizant and aware of impacts to the environment, and it's even included in FDOT's mission statement of preserving the environment within Florida. Any impacts to habitat connectivity and any impacts to just habitat in general, we take it very seriously, and so it's very important for us to identify those locations where it's important to make sure we connect those vital habitats for Florida's wildlife. So motorist safety is very important to the Florida Department of Transportation. In the last 5 years within the state of Florida, there's been 24 human fatalities due to collisions with wildlife. In the U.S., there's over 1 million vehicle wildlife collisions every year, costing $8.3 billion. So for comparison, the cost of installing a new wildlife bridge crossing on a 2-lane roadway would be approximately $2 to $4 million. It's very important that we consider wildlife connectivity for any new alignments or any of those capacity projects to make sure that habitats are connected and wildlife can safely cross our roadways, both for motorist safety as well as the wildlife's connectivity.
So if we're going to protect our natural areas, we need to have an understanding of it. We need to invest in the science. We need to have an understanding of how the system works if we are really to care for it. The science and investment we put into researching these animals and their movements gives us a glimpse of how the ecosystem functions together. We're looking at tens of thousands of separate relationships and interactions that make up the rich ecosystem. Our job is to try to help make decisions based on that science and that understanding, so that future generations of Floridians still have the hope of seeing that Florida panther around the bend as they go down the Everglades National Park or the Big Cypress Sanctuary. Now, the Florida Wildlife Corridor isn't just an organization. Actually, the Florida Wildlife Corridor that we're really focused on is the physical geography, the landscape in Florida that encompasses about 17 million acres. Almost 10 million of this 17 million acre footprint has already been purchased and is in protection in some kind of conservation easement. Florida's state parks, our national wildlife refuges and preserves, national parks, these all make up these tremendously important habitat patches, but they're not connected in any protected way. So what we're hoping to do is make sure that we can pursue through conservation easements or fee simple land acquisition protected and connected corridors that link these important pieces within our state. One of our biggest challenges is getting the public and the decision makers to have a big enough vision to think and plan long term. as Aldo Leopold would say, to take the long view. That's our goal, is to let folks know that this is going to affect multiple generations. The road you put in today, not just where you put it in, but what features it has. Have you elevated it over wetlands? Have you made it permeable to bears and panthers by putting in wildlife crossings? So that 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, the wildlife that's passing through that will be sufficient to maintain genetic health and diversity that we all love. We all love it. So let's protect it.
Currently we have over 100 crossings identified on our GIS map. To date, we've collected more than 4,000 pictures and videos, which really helps us to identify which species are utilizing which types of crossings, which species that we need to target for specific areas, and really helps us in the design process to identify the minimum length and width that are needed for each type of crossing. So with all the data that we've collected, we've noticed that the wildlife fencing really helps to funnel the wildlife to these crossings, and so the wildlife aren't bypassing the crossing and going somewhere else. So it's very important that we incorporate that wildlife fencing again to help funnel the wildlife towards the crossing. This is evidenced by Alligator Alley, where we have miles and miles of fencing along the roadway that funnel the wildlife to the more than 40 crossings that are along Alligator Alley. Once we have all this data, it really helps us to understand which types of crossings are best suited for each location. So we're trying to identify the target species that may utilize the area. We have many options available to us. We can do a full bridge crossing. We can do a bridge crossing with shelves on it. We can do a large box culvert. With the FSOP's Foundation's help, we've been able to identify even a small 36-inch pipe culvert has been utilized by many types of smaller mammals.
So after 224 got hit, we took her back to the same clinic where they performed another surgery and fixed up her other leg. Really a stark image when you see the hardware still in that previous broken leg. And then, she's got new hardware in the newly broken leg. So basically the same procedure as the first time, repaired her fracture, and then same thing. Went back up to White Oak, so this rehab went pretty smoothly. She was kind of used to the procedure, and the kittens, they were kept separate until the bone itself was healed enough that we could put them back together. And then when it came time for release, we actually released them all together, which is the first time something like that has ever been done. And we released them on the border of Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park and Picayune Strand State Forest. That location was about 15 miles from where she was hit, but it didn't take long before Mom started to head back home again, using one of the underpasses on I-75, and then started moving back west. And it was just a few weeks before she was back home again. The two brothers, they hung out together for several months. And then after they started to make some dispersals like young male panthers do, they eventually crossed into the Panther Refuge using the underpasses along I-75 as well, and made large movements, again, like dispersing male panthers do. Unfortunately, both of them suffered the same fate and got hit by cars and were killed.
We think of infrastructure in terms of roads, I-4, the Turnpike, I-95, I-75, and that infrastructure, of course, is important for getting us around Florida as we continue to grow. But the green infrastructure is extremely important as well. I am just so proud in the position that I'm in. It's an honor, I should say, the position I'm in as a Lake County Commissioner, to be able to have some influence on trying to protect this green infrastructure, what's left of it in Florida, and being an advocate for education and showing people, some people have moved here within the last year. Some people moved just even a few weeks ago, 900 to 1,000 people a day. So it's a real blessing for me to be able to, be an advocate and kind of educate on the importance of, what you see and you come out here, you're getting, as we say in Lake County, real Florida, real close. This is the real Florida. Disney World, the tourist attractions, the vibrant cities that we have in Florida are all great, but we've also got this, and it's worth protecting.
We want to make sure that the Florida panther thrives in the state of Florida. And we have the opportunity here to do that and to make really just adequate changes to our designs, ensure the protection of the Florida panther, adding these wildlife crossing features, lengthening a bridge that was already planned. Really doesn't take a whole lot of effort and or resources to do that. And so we just need to identify these locations, and that'll go a long ways to not only protecting the Florida panther, but other of Florida's species.
When we're looking at corridors, some corridors represent these significant migration events that happen on a seasonal or biannual basis. For instance, a dominant male Florida panther has a home range that it will defend of 200 square miles. That's a significant chunk of real estate. But that's not the entire story. If you protect 200 square miles, you've not saved the Florida panther. These animals have dispersal events when they have a litter. Those kittens will grow up and eventually need to find their own places. And so they will disperse from that home range of their parents. And as they do that, they're going to cross roads and rivers and find habitat that's suitable. Getting the right kinds of wildlife crossings in place, getting our elected officials and our planners to build and plan around a green corridor, that's really key.
What we're doing in Lake County is we're starting by looking at what we can do to protect the green swamp. The green swamp, of course, is in the center of the state, which is both the headwaters to the Everglades, but then also to the Claremont Chain of Lakes, the Platte-La-Caja River. Working with the Florida Wildlife Corridor Organization to map primary wildlife corridors through Lake County, through the green swamp, so that I know as a county commissioner, I'm going to be able to make an educated decision when it comes to land use. I'm going to be able to look at those maps and say, this is a primary corridor for wildlife. We need to be really careful on what we do with development. For instance, there is the Lake Orange Expressway that is planned through the Central Florida Expressway Authority. And we're working right now to make sure that the overpasses are put in the right places, that there is every measure built into the design, the engineering of that toll road to protect and conserve our wildlife. So we know that there's a corridor, a critical corridor that comes up from the south into the Lake Louisa-Hiluchi area where we're at now. And so we want to make sure that as that road is engineered and designed and then eventually built, that the wildlife is able to move freely underneath that road. And so that's exciting to be a part of that project right now, making sure that all those measures are put in place to protect the corridor, to protect this priceless national treasure. I know that I only have so much time as an elected official, and I need to make the most of that time. And this is something that I want to do. I want to be a leader. I want to be a part of a legacy of protecting Florida. I want to be a part of protecting Florida's green infrastructure. I want to be a part of keeping something good here for my kids. My kids are growing up right now. They are starting to develop an appreciation for Florida and the uniqueness of Florida. So I want them to have the Florida that I have now. And that's why this is exciting for me to be a part of this. We know that roads have an impact, and there's no way around that. Sometimes they're not the prettiest things, but if we're going to build it, let's do it the right way.
So obviously FP 224 is a success story. She's been hit by cars twice, amazingly was not killed by them, only suffered broken legs that we were able to repair. Now that she's back out there, she's contributing to the population. she's making babies. She's had 5 litters so far, producing a total of 16 kittens. So she's doing her part to keep the panther population going. The other aspect that makes her story so fascinating is just where she lives. You know, she's not out in the middle of Big Cypress National Preserve or some of these larger areas that are out in what people consider the wilderness. She's living literally on the edge of town, crossing roads occasionally, obviously, living next to people, very close to houses, roads, all the infrastructure that we have here in Florida. And she's still able to make a go at it, raising kittens. And I think given the chance, they would live out in the wilderness, who wouldn't? But they are very adaptable. As a species, pumas range from North through Central and South America, and they cover all sorts of habitats within that range, from the highest mountains to the lowest swamps that we have here in Florida. So they're very adaptable as a species, and adaptability is what makes them so resilient and able to adapt to us, really. As long as their basic requirements are being met, having enough space to live and find food, cover to raise their kittens, if those things are being met around where these human habitats are, panthers can live amongst us, and they do. We know what it takes to have them around forever. We just need to give them the opportunity, but it's up to us to make the right decisions to allow those opportunities to happen for panthers. And it stems from everybody, from individuals, purchasing the Save the Panther license plate that supports our efforts, our research and management efforts, up to county and government officials supporting programs that provide corridors and underpasses. Getting yourself educated about what these cats need to survive and being tolerant of that and letting it happen.
Whether you moved to Florida last week or you're a native like me or multi-generational, 5-6 generations of living in Florida, we all have a role in how we plan for the future. 1,000 people a day moving to Florida. There's something that each and every one of us can be doing, and I think should be doing, to protect the corridor, support efforts to protect the wildlife corridors, support planning efforts that will both recognize the need to grow as more and more people want to come to Florida, but we'll also realize that as equally important to that, economic growth is making sure that our wildlife resources, our natural resources are protected, because if we lose that, what does Florida have?
Talking about FP 224, this female Florida panther, she's made multiple attempts to have litters, and the goal here is to bring this population up to a level where we can remove them from the endangered species list altogether. Right now, all of our really viable population of Florida panthers are south of the Caloosahatchee River. If we're going to make this population robust and go from endangered to threatened and eventually threatened to off the list altogether, we need to have successful populations established north of the Caloosahatchee River. Females, males, with litters that survive. And what's stopping that is the connectivity of the habitat. Getting those cats to safely move up to and over the Caloosahatchee River and having roadways that are anticipating eventual populations. Right now we have several males north of the Caloosahatchee River and a couple females, but it's not a population that's established and it's not sufficient, but we're hoping to get there. So again, if we're having that big, long view, that visionary plan, we'd like to think that our communities that we're growing right now, we're growing with panthers in mind. Right now you may just hope to see a bear, but imagine 2 generations of Floridians from now, the communities right now where we're building connections are seeing panthers.
The way 224 is reproducing, making kittens. It's very possible that one of her kittens in the future could use these corridors that we're creating right now and these underpasses that we're building and make it all the way up into North Florida. So if we just give Panthers the chance, they'll make it happen.
I think for me it's exciting to know that the offspring of FP 224 could visit us here in Lake County, especially the male offspring. Through that corridor, you know, that's something that would be pretty cool for my kids to see, and I want to be a part of that.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat